Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be going over the best position 5 in Dota right now, and that is Chen. Chen proved to be the best hero at the most recent major, and honestly, I think even though it's going to get nerfed in the upcoming patch, it's not going to matter. I believe if you're looking for a position 5 hero to learn and play and spam and dominate with, even in pubs, Chen is a great option. Now, it might be a little bit daunting because of the micro, but honestly, I really don't think you should worry. It takes a little bit of practice, but even then, the main parts of Chen are actually just farming so that you can hit your mech plus Hand of God timing at around minute 9 to minute 11. And that is the main thing that makes Chen broken. That and his stacking potential. I've watched like a ton of Chen replays to prep for this video, and I haven't seen too much stacking actually from these players. I don't know if it's because it's pubs or not, but either way, we're going to be watching Dubu here today, watch him go a mech-based build, and essentially dominate on Chen. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like, literally, with the gameleap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but like actually you want to become much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the gameleap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below, I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. Alright, so in terms of the early levels and starting items, you're going to go for this item build every single game, which is headdress plus 3 tangos. There's no exception to this, because the headdress is going to build into your later mechanism, which is the whole point of the current Chen, rushing a mech with Hand of God. On top of that, he but takes his Divine Favor very early on, and I absolutely agree with this. I think honestly Penitence is just unreliable early on into the lane. I think 30 attack speed is pretty hard to use. From there, you could take Holy Persuasion at level 1, but the problem is you can't even use it until the small camp spawns. In fact, sometimes what people do, as we'll see Dubu actually do here, is just straight up take melee creeps. I don't exactly know why you would opt for a melee creep. The most common thing I see players do is take range creeps, because range creeps have a much easier time doing damage and are better at farming creep camps. And honestly, in the early levels, you're not really doing anything. The only thing you should do is immediately ship out a sentry ward, as well as an extra set of tangos to share them with your carry. And then from there, you basically just look to unblock the small camp and yeah, just play around the small camp. It's all about the small camp. As you'll see here, he gets this first broken, stupid creep of the lane, which is heal. This troll priest creep heals 100 HP every 10 seconds. Like, what in the world? It's actually one of the most ridiculous things in the game currently. Plus, it gives a 15% heal amp in an AoE, which is, it's just like, it makes no sense. These creeps are so broken, it's literally ridiculous. If you have this creep in lane, you can't lose lane. Like, it's actually infinite healing. Dawnbreaker goes on it, and he's going to heal himself for 115, and then from there, he can just heal the Bristleback off cooldown, as well as use the small creep to last hit and deny, and that's the main thing you're going to do. You can pressure ranged heroes in the lane, right, just because creeps do a lot of damage to ranged heroes, but yeah, if you manage to get like any of the small camp creeps, frankly, there's a lot of them that just dominate the lane. The Harpy Stormcrafter, the Troll Priest as we saw, the Snow Lady is really strong, and any of these are going to help you in the lane. But yeah, you're not really a lane dominator, guys, for the most part, unless you happen to get the Harpy Stormcrafter. That thing can kind of pop off early on. You're mostly just playing for a later timing, and we'll eventually start to see that happen. From there, honestly, I wish Dubu would actually put more of a priority on stacking for Bristleback. To be fair, he's not on Dire, so it's not as good. I think Chen on Dire is actually insane, because the stack potential with carries like Bristleback is nasty. But the thing is, you can still do it on Radiant. I would have liked to see Dubu go stack with the weaker small camp creep. He didn't do it this game. I'm not exactly sure why. I honestly think it's largely just a mistake, as he's actually going to look to go for the Snow Lady here. So the next thing you're going to do as Chen is determine whether or not your safe laner needs you. If your safe laner needs you to lane, for instance this game, I would say he needs a little bit of help. DP Dawn is a bit threatening, but it's not too bad when he gets his Vanguard. Then you want to look to pull, right? Stay in lane, get the heal creeps, heal them up, etc, etc. The fact that you can have 2 of these heal creeps is hilarious. It's actually so broken. It's crazy. But the big thing here, and I actually watched a replay where a Chen did this, but if the carry does not need help, you can just jungle. Like, Chen easily jungles. In fact, the Chen I watched in a game took over 2 of the range creeps and then proceeded at level 3 to just full-time jungle a 9-minute mech. And it actually was pretty good. The thing was, he knew his partner in lane wouldn't really need his help. Alright, so next thing that I really like from Dubu is he's actually going to stack this large camp on the right side of the Radiant jungle into the rune, right? And he's going to look to help with the rune. Unfortunately, Chen isn't really that useful at this point in the game. He can look to heal the puck with this creep, which he's going to do. It's actually pretty valuable. Yeah, in general, your hero doesn't do too much. It depends on what creeps you have for sure. Like the Snow Lady, for instance, at this point in the game is actually extremely powerful. But in a lot of situations, you're not going to do that much, which is why I actually think a lot of players play Chen very wrong, including pros. I'm pretty anti-skirmishing too much as Chen early on. I think it's just not really how the hero should be looked at or played in most games. I think the hero should be played as a flash farmer. Even here, he's going to take over this weird Wild Wing creep and use it to jungle. And this is what I mean. You might be like, oh, but his puck is dying. Realistically, he's not going to do much to save the puck. And really what's going to enable him to be extremely strong in this game, well, is having a 9-minute mech. Or I think he gets a 10-minute mech this game. Do keep in mind he buys a Bassi. Basically, you can have a lot of mana problems on Chen, and it also gives the mana to your creeps. So it's pretty good. From there, Dubu is once again going to look to actually contest the runes. He's got 2 mud golems. It's a pretty good combo early game. Quite a bit of damage. I will say once again, I know I'm like harping a bit on my opinion on how Chen should be played. I really personally am against him being this active and roaming this much. Only because I feel like in a lot of situations it just doesn't do too much. It's not that you can't do anything. One of the big advantages of Chen, and one of the big reasons why you can get active on Chen, is sort of what we're going to see here. Chen is one of the best tower divers in the game. So if this Invoker does retreat to his tower, even though it looks like he won't even make it to there, you can tank the tower extremely well with your creeps. So if your team is looking to dive a tower, or wants to dive a tower, or wants to push a tower, you should actually show up in the early game, and you're going to be extremely useful. But you will kind of see in this engagement, he's not going to do very much. He's going to get ran at, baits a little bit of attention from the Death Prophet, which I guess is good. You know, that's something. But he really doesn't do too much. And you might be like, okay, so this hero is just pointless speed. You're just telling me it does nothing. Well, give me a minute and I'll show you what it does do. Also, just for a little bit of perspective, guys, you can't really take over any of the useful creeps until you have level 3 in Holy Persuasion. So just keep that in mind. You're going to have to take over the smaller creeps and use those to jungle early on. From there, you can start to get your big creeps, and this is when you really want to get active. When you have your level 6 and your mech and your big creeps, this is when Chen can become a very, very powerful hero and is arguably the best hero in the game at this point in the game. And no, that is not an over-exaggeration. So, on his timing, Dubu is going to walk to the top side of the map. You do have to be very careful about mana. As we'll see, he actually ships out a Clarity, pops that Clarity, and then proceeds to buy another Clarity as he goes for an interesting side pull here to help the Timber get the wave back. But the big thing that I really want you guys to understand is that literally if you cast all of your abilities plus mech, that's your entire mana pool. So you need a full mana pool in team fights. Really make sure you're not 100 mana as he's going to get the mid tower. And finally, we're going to get to see the real impact of Chen in a team fight. Even now, you're not really going to see how extreme this hero can be, only because he has to kind of use his heals to save a singular target. But just so you understand, mech heals for 275, which is an insane amount of healing in a massive 1200 radius. You're going to hit everyone in the area. But more importantly, Hand of God heals for 200 flat when you cast it, and then 20 for 10 seconds, meaning it's a 400 heal, meaning you heal for 675 health. That's like how much damage Dawnbreaker does at this point in the game, right? It's ridiculous, and you'll see he's going to lead in, and it's a beautiful engagement, and really it's set up by Dubu, and this is one of the main advantages also of Chen and why pro teams like Chen so much. It's a vision hero. Because he gets to go in, right, with his creeps, it enables Timbersaw to get a really good jump. More importantly, it enables Puck to get a very, very key coil, and from there, Winter Wyvern, a massive curse. All in all, it's just an extremely well set up fight from Dubu, and you have to understand that stems off literally just vision from a creep. It's not a complex play in terms of mechanical skill. but it's brutally important to do if you're Chen. Lead your team with smokes and send creeps up the hills, and it completely prevents someone on your team from having to tank the go right from the enemy team, and he's going to take a huge fight. You can see he actually preemptively pops Hand of God. You don't wait last second to pop Hand of God anymore to get the max value. You want to use it very early on into fights because it heals for 10 seconds, right? So it's very crucial that you use it basically right away and not 10, 20 seconds into the fight. That is old Chen. New Chen uses Hand of God right away and then mechs after. Mech is the late save typically now, and Hand of God is actually the first save because it gives regen. So just to play that back, his Timber is going to get gone on, and with pretty little hesitation, he's going to pop the Hand of God. Unfortunately, Timber is vesseled, so he's not getting healed too much, but from the Wyvern and from the Chen, he's able to heal up the Timber just enough to buy a lot of time, and he forces the Dawnbreaker to overcommit very, very hard, and they get a really nice team fight. From there, Chen is one of the best Roshan heroes in the game, so you can really see why pros value this hero, right? It's not a lane dominator, which I'd say is Chen's kind of biggest weakness. He's pretty meh in lane, unless you get some of the God creeps, which he did this game. I think the enemy team made a huge mistake of not spam blocking his small camp. And the reality is, in pubs, you're not going to get your camp blocked either. But if you don't know why Chen's good at roshing, basically you heal your team with Divine Favor, mech, and whatever creeps. And then on top of that, Penitence gives attack speed to everyone hitting Rosh. And therefore, you just Rosh extremely fast. Also, when it comes to like what creeps you should take over, because I'm sure a lot of people are like curious what are the best creeps to take over. You honestly shouldn't worry about it too much. Most creeps are pretty good. Like for instance, you can see Dubu even has a Kobold Foreman, which is actually one of the best mid to late game creeps in the game. It's hilarious, but it really is. In an AoE, it gives 12% movement speed. That is an insanely large amount of movement speed. 12% is insanely large. So really, most creeps have a lot of value. The Alpha Wolf is extremely good if your team does physical damage. The Wild Wing Ripper is good for force staffing your teammates and enemies, right? So basically every creep has purpose. You shouldn't be too selective. It's more about just building up an arsenal and going from there. If you do have a selection, stacking the Troll Priests, the one that summons the skeletons, can be really OP. But from there, honestly, it's better just to have a diverse set of creeps. Maybe a magic resist creep, a movement speed creep, the Alpha Wolf creep. This is typically how pros will do it. And another thing that's really cool about Chen, as we'll see in this clip here, is the hero is extremely good at baiting and actually tanking engagements as well. If you decide to go for a build like this Holy Locket build, even he has a Ring of Aquila as his neutral item, you become very, very tanky. 1500 HP with, like, at this point, I would say about 1000 healing with the Holy Locket. Maybe even more, maybe even 1200 with the Holy Locket healing is insane. So his Bristle's going to get jumped here. Once again, early Hand of God into the mech. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Vessel is obviously a hard counter to your hero. If you happen to be playing against Chen, you should buy a Vessel. But you'll see in this clip here, he's going to get hard committed on from the DP. But because of the fact that he's so damn tanky, he's able to buy an insane amount of time. Also, I think his Wild Ring got silenced. I was like, why didn't he push himself? But you can see, you can just buy so much freaking time, as he actually did push himself away at the last second with the Wild Wing Ripper. He actually probably should have used it to snap the coil there on one of the cores. That would have been a really cool play. But look how hard the enemy team overcommits, right? And that's a big thing as a support. The more time you could buy, even if it's only 2 or 3 seconds longer than a different support hero would be able to buy, it's a huge deal because the enemy team completely overextends and they get team wipe, literally team wipe, largely because they chased Chen for much longer than they would have liked to. In terms of items as well, I would have liked to see him buy a drums to enable his bristle back a little bit. I also think the movement speed and extra health is really nice. He decides to go for Vlad's, which is good. Building into Wraith Pact eventually is one of the best builds you can go on Chen. Typically you're just buying auras, but I'm really a huge fan of drums. I think the item is pretty broken. I think it allows people to close the gap. I think movement speed is just insane, and it works very well with your creeps. If you do happen to find a support with your creeps and you drums them, it allows them to close the gap on the enemy and have that attack speed, even especially with Penitence, to really just kill off supports. You can solo kill supports, by the way, as Chen. Any ranged hero that is slow, like AAs, your Rubiks, heroes like this, just get completely dumpstered by Chen. And so yeah, those are really the main things I'd recommend you guys focus on. Obviously, I haven't really covered every single little thing you could do with Chen. I would like to give a couple of honorable mention tips before we watch the last fight of the game. Number one, your shard and your ags. So your shard, for every level of Hand of God, you can take over 1 extra ancient creep. So basically, people buy this quite often to take over the ancient creeps, such as the ancient granite golem to give their team bonus health, or like the black dragon to push in waves. They become very powerful for those reasons. So it is good. I think it's a little bit meh. I'm not a huge fan of the shard, only because I think going out of your way to take ancient creeps, especially ancient creeps that your team realistically could have farmed, is often a bad idea. So I'm not a huge fan of the Chen shard, but in games where you're snowballing, it can be very good. And then the ags at some point in the game is actually straight up broken depending on the matchup. For instance, if the enemy team has a Bane that they are very much relying on to lock down your Giga farmed core, then Hand of God with the ags is straight up broken because it applies globally. It applies a strong dispel to all allies, which is incredibly powerful, especially against something like Tidehunter Ravage in the late game. You straight up can purge everyone that gets hit by Ravage, which is nutty, right? It's a nutty concept. And you might be like, oh, it's too expensive. It's not. Chen can jungle. Like literally, you will never see a pro Chen with low CS in a game. It's just barely ever gonna happen, if not never. You'll see out of all the supports, he has the highest CS. He's close to an offlane Death Prophet. Realistically, Dubu didn't even play that greedy this game. Trust me, he could have played way more greedy, and I think it would have been fine. But either way, let's get into the last fight. Kind of a similar concept as before, but yeah, he's gonna go for deep wards, gets jumped, and just buys a lot of time. Uses the Wild Wing Ripper to push himself away from the Marcy. I think in that case, he probably should have pushed himself down and not into the Death Prophet. Perhaps a bit of a mistake in that regard. But he gets off his mech and he just buys, once again, a lot of time. On top of that, I even think he could have done, realistically, a bit of a better job of scouting with his units before running up this hill. I think it's very important to always just play with the units. I think he really felt that the enemy team, like, there's no way they're going to be here. Like, their Bloodseeker's dead. His team is pushing high ground. So it is very shocking for him to bump into them. I'm sure he didn't expect this. But do, please, guys, send your creeps up hills. If your team wants to push a tier 2, send the creeps into the TP locations in the trees, right? If your team wants to walk up a hill, send them here. If your team is roshing, right? If you're roshing, send a creep up here. Send a creep up here. Send a creep up here. You see what I'm saying? You want to give the vision. You don't really need the creeps to own in team fights. You shouldn't be too worried about even the actives. The bigger part of the creeps in the mid to late game is the vision game, and you should really look at it like that. Unless you have like an alpha wolf. That creep is straight up broken late game. 30% bonus damage to heroes like Terrorblade is like straight up insane. But alright, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and I'm out. Peace.
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.